Hello everyone, so in this video tutorial I'll be talking about clinical presentation and diagnosis of COVID-19. So let's start with the clinical presentation. So when we talk about symptoms of COVID-19, the most common symptoms include fever. In the graph we can see that fever is reported in approximately 98% of cases. The course of fever is not understood yet, but in most of the cases it is prolonged and intermittent. Then fatigue. Fatigue is reported in approximately 70% of cases. Most of the patients with COVID-19, they complain of feeling very weak and they feel exhausted, right? Then cough. Cough can be productive and non-productive, right? Productive means presence of mucus into the cough, and non-productive means dry cough. The cough which is seen in COVID-19 is mostly a dry cough, right? Then anorexia. We can see that anorexia is reported in approximately 40% of cases. Anorexia means lack of appetite. Then we can see myalgia and arthralgia is reported in 35% of cases. Patients complain of joint and muscle pains, right? Then dyspnea. Dyspnea is reported in 30% of cases. Dyspnea means difficulty in breathing. The prevalence is less because dyspnea is mostly seen in moderate to severe cases. Then sore throat and headache. Patients can also be presented with the sore throat and headache. Its prevalence is around 18%. Okay. Now, apart from these common symptoms, there are few uncommon symptoms, or we can say less prevalent symptoms. It includes conjunctivitis, confusion, chest pain, then rhinorrhea. Rhinorrhea means mucus discharge, excessive mucus discharge into the nasal cavity. Then hemoptysis, presence of blood into the sputum, and cutaneous manifestations. Cutaneous manifestations are very rare, but there are few case reports which shows the presence of skin rashes, or we can say other skin reactions. Okay. Now the Chinese CDC divides the symptoms into three categories based on its severity. It's mild, or we can say mild to moderate, severe, and critical. Right here in the pie chart we can see that the green zone, it shows the percentage of mild cases, and that is 81%. The yellow zone shows the percentage of severe cases, that is approximately 14%, and the red zone shows this critical cases, right, and that is approximately 5%. Right. Okay. Now mild cases include asymptomatic patients, or we can say patients who are presented with the very mild symptoms such as cough, headache, fever, right? There won't be any sign of pneumonia in the mild cases. When we talk about severe cases, it includes patients who are having difficulty in breathing, right? Patients with the respiratory rate higher than the 30 beats per minute, right? Their partial pressure of oxygen will be less than 93%, right? So obviously patient is having difficulty in breathing, their partial pressure is less than 93%, so patient will be put on a oxygen supply. There will be a lung infiltrate. Patient's X-ray will be showing lung infiltrate in greater than 50% of area. Now if we talk about critical cases, it includes patients who are having respiratory failure, who are having acute respiratory distress syndrome, patients who are not able to breathe only, so they'll be put on a mechanical ventilator, right? There'll be a septic shock or sepsis, which can ultimately lead to organ failure, and patients can die also. So such cases comes under the severe category. I hope you have understood the clinical presentation. Now let's talk about diagnosis. So we know that the diagnosis of COVID-19 takes time. It takes approximately 1 day to get a result. And the symptoms of COVID-19, they are quite similar to the symptoms of common cold. So it is not possible to perform this test for everybody who is having symptoms such as cough, fever, headache, right? So the CDC has given priorities for testing patients with suspected COVID-19. Who comes under first priority? So first priority should be given to the hospitalized patients so that we can avoid nosocomial infection, or I can say hospital acquired infection, right? And symptomatic healthcare workers such as nurses, doctors, clinical pharmacists, so that we can maintain the integrity of healthcare system. Obviously अगर nurses doctors ही बीमार हो जाएंगे तो who are going to take care of us, है ना? Now the second priority should be given to the patients who are at highest risk of complications of infection, such as patients who are staying in a long term care facilities जैसे कि नर्सिंग होम्स, रिहेबिलिटेशन सेंटर, राइट. देन पेशेंट्स हु आर एट द एज ऑफ 65 एंड ओल्डर. जो ओल्डर पेशेंट्स है उनके अंदर ये डिजीज़ का प्रिविलेंस ज़्यादा है, ये चीज़ हमें पता है ना. देन पेशेंट्स विद द कोमॉर्बिड कंडीशंस, right? Patients who are having comorbid conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease conditions, asthma, COPD, this would be given the second priority, right? So in short, patients who are at highest risk of complications should be given second priority. Now the third priority should be given to the individuals in the surrounding community of rapidly increasing hospital cases to decrease community spread. So third priority जो है वो उन लोगों को दी जाएंगी जो ऐसी कम्युनिटी में रहते हैं कि जहाँ पे कम्युनिटी ट्रांसमिशन बहुत जल्दी से बढ़ रहा है, right? And to the critical infrastructure worker with the symptoms, यानी कि the workers who are involved in sanitization process, then the police people, the people who are involved in pharmacies, the people who are involved in drug manufacturing companies, right? This would be given third priority. Diagnosis of COVID-19 can be done by two methods. One is PCR, that is polymerase chain reaction, and another one is rapid blood testing kits. So first we'll discuss about the PCR. Now to perform the PCR, first we need to collect the sample, and sample is collected from the nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swab. Now during this step, collecting a good sample is very crucial, because if we do not collect a proper sample, then there won't be enough virus load on that sample, and that can lead to a false negative result. So collecting a good sample is very much required. Now if the result comes negative and we still suspect the patients for COVID-19, then the sample will be collected from the lower respiratory tract. It includes endotracheal sample and bronchoalveolar lavage, right? Now the technique or the PCR technique which is used for the COVID-19 is called as a reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. Now why it is called as a reverse transcriptase PCR? Because we know that the PCR can amplify, PCR can replicate the DNA into the more copies, right? But our sample contains the RNA. So first we need to convert the RNA into the DNA. So it's a reverse process, right? Normally क्या होता है, DNA में से RNA बनता है, but here we are converting the RNA into the DNA. And the enzyme which is required for that is called as a reverse transcriptase. So from that, this process is called as a reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, right? Now, so in the first step, we'll be mixing all virus sample with the free nucleotides and reverse transcriptase enzyme, so that reverse transcriptase will consider the single stranded RNA which is present in the sample as a complementary strand and will synthesize the double stranded DNA. So first step will be the conversion of single stranded RNA to double stranded DNA by enzyme called reverse transcriptase, right? Okay. Now after this step, the remaining process will be same as in the other PCR. So let's discuss the polymerase chain reaction. Okay. So PCR, or we can say polymerase chain reaction, is a method of molecular biology which converts the specific DNA into a millions or billions of copies, right? So scientists take a small amount of DNA and then they amplifies it into a large enough amount so they can study it into a detail, right? Now this PCR technique is used for the diagnosis of infections, and apart from that it is also used for the crime investigations, right? हम जो भी fingerprinting and all crime movies में देखते हैं, that is done by the PCR. Then it is also used for the genetic research and molecular biology. Now the instrument which is used in this PCR technique is called as a thermal cycler, right? The sample, or we can say the components that are added into this thermal cycler includes DNA templates, Taq polymerase, primers, nucleotides, right? Now DNA template is nothing but a segment of our original DNA which is going to be replicated. Now Taq polymerase is the enzyme which is required for the DNA replications, right? Taq polymerase is thermostable enzyme. This enzyme is derived from the heat tolerated bacteria called Thermus aquaticus. Then primers. Primers are the specific short sequence of nucleotides, right, which will be used as a starting point for the DNA replications. They helps in identification of specific DNA region or specific target DNA which we are going to replicate, right? Then nucleotides are the building blocks for the DNA synthesis process, right? So all these components will be added to the thermocycler, right, for the processing of PCR. The PCR process includes 3 steps. First is the denaturation, second is the annealing, and third one is the extension, right? So let's discuss each step one by one. So first is the denaturation. So in the denaturation process, the sample is heated to a 96 degrees Celsius, right? So because of this high temperature, right, the DNA sample will break down into a 2 separate single strand DNA, right? Our original double stranded DNA will get separated into a 2 separate strand DNA by this process of denaturation, okay? Now the next step is annealing. The annealing word comes from the metallic industry, where the metal is heated to a high temperature and then it is cooled down to remove the defaults, or to remove the internal defects in the metal, right? The same method is used in our PCR also, that is why it is called as a annealing. Now in this annealing process, our previously heated sample is cooled down to a 55 degrees Celsius. Now this cooler temperature, this 55 degrees Celsius, will allow the primers to attach to a specific region of DNA, or we can say to a target region of DNA, which will act as a starting point for the DNA replication, right? So that was annealing. Now the next step is extension. In the extension, the sample is again heated to a 72 degrees Celsius, and the enzyme Taq polymerase is highly active at 72 degrees Celsius. So the Taq polymerase will get attached to a primers, it will grab some free nucleotides and will assemble the new DNA strand, right? So at the end of this extension process, our single stranded to separate DNA strands will get converted into a double stranded to DNA, right? So now this PCR cycles, it takes approximately around 10 minutes. So at the end of each cycles, there will be a double number of DNA, right? So if we say that at the end of first cycle there will be a 2 DNA, then at the end of second cycle there will be a 4 DNA, then at the end of third cycle there will be a 8 DNA. So there will be an exponential rise in the DNA numbers. So after 5 to 6 hours we can create billions of DNA copies from one specific DNA. let's talk about COVID-19 rapid test kit. This test kit, it comes with the three things. One is buffer solution, then a dropper and test cassette. Buffer solution, it will be helpful in run of sample. It produces a capillary action which facilitate the sample run. Then dropper will be helpful in adding a sample, and the test kit is a simple plate where the test will be performed. Okay, so the COVID-19 rapid test, it works on the principle of chromatographic immunoassay, right? It detects the immunoglobulin G and immunoglobulin M antibodies against SARS coronavirus 2, right? The sample which is taken for the detection is either blood or serum, or it can be plasma. Okay, when we are exposed to the COVID-19 infection, the first immunoglobulin appears into our body is immunoglobulin M, but it remains undetectable till 7 to 8 day. This period is called as a window period, right? We know that the incubation period for COVID-19 is 5 to 7 days, and immunoglobulin M becomes detectable after 3 days from the onset of symptoms. So we should always keep in mind that this test should not be performed as soon as the symptoms appears. It should always be performed after 3 days from the onset of symptoms. Now we know that these symptoms last for the approximately 14 days, and after 14 days this phase is called as a recovery phase. Patient starts recovering, right? So immunoglobulin G becomes immunoglobulin G appear into the body approximately on 15th day, and then it remains for 3 to 5 months. Sometime it can also last for the 1 year, right? So here we can say that immunoglobulin M suggests the current infections, whereas immunoglobulin G suggests the previous infection. Okay, now let's discuss the process of this rapid COVID-19 test kit. Now this schematic diagram of test cassette contains the 4 regions: sample pad, conjugated pad, nitrocellulose pad and absorption pad. The sample pad is the region where the sample solutions such as blood, plasma or serum can be kept, and it also contains the buffer solutions. Buffer solution will help in the run of sample along the test cassette, right? Now for example, our blood sample contains the immunoglobulin M and G both, right? Okay. Now this conjugated pad, it contains the SARS coronavirus 2 antigen bound to the colloidal gold, right? And it also contains this pink color region, we can see it also contains anti-chicken immunoglobulin M bound to the colloidal gold. So it contains two things: SARS coronavirus 2 antigen and anti-chicken immunoglobulin M bound to the colloidal gold. Now this anti-chicken immunoglobulin M will help in the appearance of control line, so that we will discuss later. Now let's come to this nitrocellulose region. So this nitrocellulose region, it contains 3 lines, M line, G line and the control line. This M line, it contains the anti-human immunoglobulin M embedded to the nitrocellulose pad, and this G line contains the anti-human immunoglobulins G bound to the nitrocellulose pad, and the control line, it contains immunoglobulin M, chicken immunoglobulin M bound to the nitrocellulose, right? Okay, so now let's talk about the process. So when we run this sample along this test cassette, first this sample will react with the SARS coronavirus 2 antigen which are present in this conjugated pad. So as I said, a sample, for example, it contains immunoglobulin G and immunoglobulin M. So they will react with this SARS coronavirus 2 antigen and they'll form complexes. So here 2 complexes will form. One is the antibody G and SARS coronavirus complex, antibody M and SARS coronavirus complex. Now as the sample run upwards, first antibody M and SARS coronavirus complex will react with the anti-human immunoglobulin M which are present here, and it will appear as a colored line, right? Then when the sample runs further upward, the other complex, that is antibody G and SARS coronavirus, will react with the anti-human immunoglobulin G and it will appear as a colored line. Now as I said that this conjugated pad also contains the anti-chicken immunoglobulin M. So this antibody M also runs upward, and here it will react with the chicken immunoglobulin M and it will appear as a colored line. This control line is very much required. If control line does not appear, that means that sample has not run completely, right, and it shows the defect into the test cassette, right. So control line should always appear, right, it shows the completion of the sample run. So that was the schematic diagram. Now actual cassette look like this. Now this rapid test kits can be used alone for the interpretation of result, or it can be used in combination with the PCR. In this table we can see the different possibilities of result. Okay, now let's talk about lab investigation. So apart from PCR and rapid test kits, lab findings can also be useful in case of COVID-19. So in most of the moderate to severe cases, patient's total blood count shows lymphopenia, and that is the decreased number of CD4 and CD8 cells, then leukopenia, that is decreased number of white blood cells, thrombocytopenia, decreased number of platelets, then neutrophilia, which is the high number of neutrophils in the affected region, and decreased number of hemoglobin. Now in most of the severe to critical cases, patients complains of breathing difficulty. So in those cases, patients should be advised for the arterial blood gas and pulse oximetry. So in most of the cases it shows the decreased partial pressure of oxygen, that is less than 92%, right. Okay, now if we talk about coagulation screening, so there will be a elevated level of D-dimers and prothrombin, right. There is one study which shows that the patient who died because of COVID-19, or we can say non-survivor of COVID-19, had a higher level of D-dimers and prothrombin compared to the survivors of COVID-19, right. So this D-dimers and prothrombin basically it suggests the presence of thrombosis in the blood vessels, or we can say it gives the sign for the deep vein thrombosis. Then if we talk about metabolic panel, then the first organ that gets affected in the severe or critical cases is the liver, right. So most of the liver enzyme will be elevated in the severe and critical cases, such as LDH and transaminases including AST and ALT. Even the synthetic capability of liver will get reduced, so there will be a reduced level of bilirubin and ferritin, because the liver cells will die, and so the ferritin which is stored in the cells will leak out from that, so there will be a high level of ferritin. Now if we talk about inflammatory mediators, then in most of the severe to critical cases, inflammatory mediators will be high because of cytokine storm. Now what is cytokine storm, that we'll discuss in a separate video, right. But in most of the severe cases, inflammatory mediators such as ESR and C-reactive protein will be elevated. Even cytokines and troponin level will be high in some cases, which shows the myocardial injury. Okay. Okay, apart from lab investigations, some imaging techniques can also be useful in COVID-19, such as chest x-ray, CT scan and lung ultrasound. Chest x-ray in COVID-19, this shows the bilateral, that means in the both the lungs, multilobar means in multiple lobes infiltrates, which is different from the bacterial infection. In most of the cases of bacterial infections, there will be a unilateral and single lobe infiltrates, which is different from the COVID-19. Then if we talk about CT scan, so CT scan is very important. CT scan can be helpful in determining the progression of disease while managing the COVID-19, because it shows some specific characteristics such as ground glass opacities. Ground glass opacities का मतलब होता है that hazy appearance, right? जो हम foggy atmosphere के अंदर जो window कैसे दिखती है, right? उसी तरह के यहाँ पे appearance देखने को मिलेगा, and so from that it is called as a ground glass appearance, right? Then if the lung further deteriorates or further damage, then the lung will show the crazy paving pattern. Now again, this specific characteristics, crazy paving pattern, it is named from the paving blocks which are used in the floors of buildings, right? यहाँ पे हम diagram में वो देख सकते हैं. So from that the name crazy paving pattern has come. So it is again a specific characteristics of COVID-19. Then if lung further deteriorates, then it is characterized by the lung consolidation. हमने pathogenesis के अंदर पढ़ा था कि all that cell debris and all this waste will accumulate and it will form a solid consolidations. So the blood vessels will not be visible in those areas, right? So that is CT scan. Then lung ultrasounds. Lung ultrasounds are not much useful, but it can show the presence of pleural effusions, or we can say pleural thickening. Now, talking about differential diagnosis, we know that the symptoms of COVID-19, they are quite similar to some other respiratory infections such as adenovirus, influenza virus, parainfluenza virus, respiratory syncytial virus, and rhinovirus. So all those conditions should be ruled out while diagnosing the COVID-19. Now, if we talk about complication of COVID-19, then it includes ARDS, that is acute respiratory distress syndrome. It is characterized by the respiratory failure. We know that in the later stages of COVID-19, there will be a formation of infiltrates and there will be a consolidation which leads to the decreased gas exchange. There will be a decreased ventilation perfusion mismatch, right? So patients won't be able to breathe properly, and we'll have to keep him on a mechanical ventilations. So that is acute respiratory distress syndrome. Then sepsis and septic shock. If infection spreads to the blood vessels, then it can lead to the vasodilation because of inflammatory mediators, and that leads to reduced blood pressure, or we can say hypotension. If the hypotensive shock occurs, then there will be a ischemia because there will be a decreased blood perfusion to the several organs, so that can ultimately leads to the multiple organ failure. So we can say multiple organ failure is also a complication, right? So if you have liked this video tutorial, then don't forget to subscribe and like my videos. Thank you.